Much out to the family, much out to the tribe. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe.
Aloha, DropNation, what it do? Thank you for surfing the wave with me, because I'm surfing the wave with you. Tawada for tuning in. This wave began with refreshing ourselves, and the currents carried us down the path of remembering, reconstructing, and reconstituting. Have you ever heard we are people with amnesia? We don't know who we are. We've been put to sleep. Things of that nature. Have you ever used a number 2 pencil, erased something, and wrote something new in its place? But even with doing that, have you ever noticed that if you look hard enough, you can see clearly a remnant of what was originally written? Have you ever started a sentence, stopped, and then be implored to finish what you were about to say? Ever notice that what was being avoided rings more true from that person, or is what that person really means? I say this to say that this is where we are with a great many things. In particular, angels and demons, dragons, and you. Dragons aren't born, they're remembered. And we're going to get it again like it's the first time. Simply put, to TemplarUp is to juxtapose, meaning to be equal in the equation to find the solution. Let me state that again. It means to be equal in the equation, be equal, to find a solution. Look at who you say and who they say. Look at what you are and what they are. Look at where you are and where they are. Look at when you are and when they are. Look at how you are and how they are. Look at why you are and why they are. And finally, look at if you are and if they are. We dropped off the wave to Ma, our mama in heaven. And now let's look at whom she hosts. The Elohim. The Nine. There's nothing really new to them, per se. To them, as far as going back generations, across cultures, even unto this day, with the exception to how we crystallize them, right? How we imagine them to be. The interesting part is no matter the cultural point of view, they serve the same purpose. They haven't changed, but we have changed. Have you ever asked, who is God to a God? Better yet, does your God have a God? At the risk of causing you discomfort, which is not really my intent, if you are putting a power before your power, and then you are not putting the Most High over everything. Let me say that again. If you are putting a power before your power, then you are not putting the Most High over everything. So who are the Elohim? The nine, as it were. The hosts of heaven. Take note of the known and the separated, right? They're broken down into three orders of three. And what often gets lost is that for each one, there are two, male and female. So, first and foremost, let's focus on the first sphere for a second. The seraph or the seraphim. The cherub or the cherubim. And then you have the thrones. Now, when it comes to the seraphim, what? They're winged, human-like celestials that hover above God's throne. And pay attention to that wording. You know, again, putting the power above your power. But it's all word magic. Because a throne is supposed to be something that you sit on, right? The singular use used to be for a seraph instead of it being a seraphim was seraphin. You know, just like you have tannin and tannin. But essentially we're talking about the burning ones, right? Or the burned. Identified as a fiery flying serpent. Right? Right. But then you also have the, what? You have the cherub or the cherubim. And they're distinctly listed as an order of angels. Depending on how you vibe and how you do your research, one may be placed above a seraphim, and you know, or a cherubim. You know, they're almost interchangeable. But we know for a fact that the cherubim is a winged angel. The cherubim is one who blesses. And let's take a closer look at the cherubim, right? For a quick, brief second. Because when it comes to the cherubim, an epitaph of a bull colossus. And when we progress further along, just keep that in the back of your mind, because we may have misunderstood something that we know very, very, very well. But we'll get to that at a later point. But notice that it says that the common features of ancient Near East mythology are not to be confused with the round-cheeked darlings of Renaissance iconography, right? Proof that of the power of the image. The root term either means hybrid or, by inversion of consonants, a mount or steed. And there are winged beasts, probably from an awesome aspect on which the sky god of the old Canaanite myths and of the poetry of the Psalms goes riding through the air, according to Robert Alter in the 5 books of Moses, right? But they also mean a beautiful child. So now you kind of have a concept and clue of where these darling little faces come from. So let's also take a look next at the thrones. So what's a throne? Well, throne is the seat of God or a saint in heaven, right? Notice that it's or. a saint in heaven. It is the seat occupied by a sovereign, a potentate, or dignity on earth. Not in heaven, on earth. It is an elevated seat, a chair or a throne. You know, it actually has a pi root going to star DHER, which means to hold firmly, support, meaning firm, steadfast, strong, stable. But take note that it also means statute or law. A throne is ultimately a symbol of royal power. Now, what I find interesting is that we tend to view this, and if you notice in the iconography here, I believe that the cherubim and seraphim are actually flipped here. But the imagery isn't too far off. But I find it funny because it says that each one had 6 wings. And we see the 2 being, or we often think that the 2 refers to the wings. Right? We often think the 2 that covered his face and the 2 that covered his feet. And then you have the 2 that flew. But we might be off in how we are understanding that which is trying to be conveyed. Now, when it comes down to the second sphere of angels, as it were, we're talking about dominions, we're talking about the virtues, and then we're talking about the powers. So what's a dominion? Dominions is lordship, sovereign, supreme authority, right? It means to rule, power. It means property, ownership, lord, master. It has its roots coming from star DEM, meaning house or household. It is the power of control, the right of uncontrolled possessions. I mean, just in going back into the original meaning of these words, something that just makes me feel uncomfortable with these things. I don't know about you. And then let us move on, because let's talk about the virtue, right? And anyone who's been rocking with me, you know I put a grand focus on the 9 worthies and the virtues. So check this out. When you're talking about the virtues and what a virtue is, we're talking about moral life and conduct, the uprightness of life. Is quite simply put, it is the opposite of vice. A particular moral excellence, not any moral excellence. It's choosy. It's particular. A virtue is a force, a strength. It's vigor. It's moral strength. And you can see in that definition, you know, we're talking about the different aspects, right? Because it makes a delineation between regular strength and then a moral strength. You know, that hero that never quits or never gives up. the one that, despite everything being around them being wrong, they stand up for something greater. Can't be a hero without having virtue. You know, but virtue means qualities. It means ability. It means high character, goodness, manliness, valor, bravery, courage, excellence, and worth. And this pi root goes back to star WI dash RO, meaning man. So even at its core, virtue means man. So what's a power? Power is simply ability. Ability to act or to do. Strength, vigor, and might. Very similar to a virtue, right? It's control, it's mastery, it's dominion. Dominion. But a dominion is also a archangel. All right? The ability or right to command or control, authorization, military force, or an army, which comes from the pi root of Ponti, right? Star P-O-T-I, meaning powerful, Lord. And just like the seraphim and cherubim can often be flipped around, and the use of thrones is included with those other two, here we have dominion, virtues, and powers almost being synonymous, interchangeable, as it were. However, none of them have the same root origin in the words. All of them are very distinct and distinctly applied. Principalities, archangels, and angels. The third sphere and final focus. A principality is a position of a prince. Not the position of a king, but a prince. Principal matter, right? Power. Sovereignty. It is a government by a prince. It is the region or state ruled by a prince or monarch. It's the state of being superior. Now, the principality root is a principal, right? A chief man, leading representative, the most part, the main part. You know, when he talks about law, it's talking about one who takes a leading part or a primarily concerned in action or proceeding. A ruler or a governor. Every state that we live in has a governor because every state that we live in is a principal. And, you know, from what I've been told, that the issue isn't against flesh and blood, but the principalities, right? All right. Notice that it also states that it's also the what? The head of a college or a hall. a main sum of money, hence money on which interest is paid. Do you know about monetization? No? Now, when we look at the principle as a descriptor, right, we're talking about the main, the principal, the chief, right, the dominant, the largest, the greatest, the most important, great or large. It's princely, it's the highest ranking. It's the first of importance. Original. Primitive. That just came out of left field, right? It's the first man, the chief leader, ruler, sovereign. Now, don't you find that interesting how that is distinct from the words that we just went over? There's a reason why this distinction is made, because now when it comes to a principle, that takes the first step, right? From primus, meaning first, where you get prime plus the root capere, which comes from star KAP, cap, which means to grasp. Maybe this makes more sense now why Captain America can throw his shield, and no matter where he throws it, it can magically always return to his hand, right? And you got to be good at being able to throw the shield, but retain it, right? Right. But then, even with principle, it goes back to prime. First, original. First in order of time. Isn't that interesting? First, the first part, figuratively chief, principal, excellent, distinguished, noble. But that root comes from star PER in the first, meaning forward, per, in front of, before, first, chief. The meaning of fine quality, of first excellence, first rank, first degree, first importance. Prime time originally meant springtime. The beginning of the year. At least it used to be. And then you have the archangel, right? Which is an angel of the highest order. Well, we're in the third sphere of the angels. So that means that everything going upwards, they're all considered archangels. That means the principality is an archangel. That means powers. That means virtues are archangels. That means the dominions are archangels. The thrones, the cherubim, the seraphim. Remember what I said earlier, that the key to a virtue is man. That we might have been looking at these things all the wrong way. That when it comes down to but yet when it comes down to a seraphim, right? We're talking about a fiery flying serpent, or a dragon, as it were. But we're still, for the most part, seem to be talking about man. So, what's an archangel again? It is directly from the Latin archangelus, right? From the New Testament Greek, meaning chief angel. Chief meaning first, see archon, which we'll go over here in a second, plus angelos, meaning angel, which we'll also cover. So an archon is one of the 9 chief magistrates of ancient Athens. It means ruler, commander, chief, or captain. It means to begin from or with, make preparations for, to rule, lead the way, govern, rule over, be leader of uncertain origin. That's these things normally tend to be. Today, what's an angel? An angel is one of a class of spiritual beings, attendants, messengers of God. All right. Attenders and messengers of God. It literally means a messenger or an envoy, one that announces. In the New Testament, it's a divine messenger. But this is interesting because they say that it's a mounted courier. Again, of unknown origin. But at least they specify this time it's an unknown Oriental word, right? Now it also states here that the Greek word was used in scriptural translations for the Hebrew malach. And you notice it says Yahweh, messenger of Jehovah. The Old English word, it meant literally an errand spirit. You know, of persons is one who is loving, gracious, and or lovely, right? You know, she's an angel, or that person's an angel. In medieval English, it was a gold coin, right? A new issue of the Noble first struck was 1465 by Prince Edward IV. So called for the image of an archangel Michael slaying a dragon, which was stamped on it. Right? For the dismount. What do you see and what do you know? What's an angel? What's a dragon? What's a man? What's a demon? And most importantly, what are you? I have yet to go over the demon side of things, but we'll get more into that later because we still need to cover the incubus and the succubus. I wanted to make sure that we discussed and talked about and went over the angels first. We need to have and gain a better grasp of them all. But I wanted to start here. Because if you notice, when it comes down to the orders, whether it's the first, second, or third, it's only in the second order where morality comes in. So when we read things that happen in Genesis or non-biblical texts that have similar stories, you notice that the morality can be lacking, as it were. So I hope that you have a better gain. I hope that you gain a better grasp of them. Because the mind creates images, and then the heart makes an association. That's how that works. That's why it's kind of hard to talk to somebody when their heart's into it, or talk them out of it, right? But again, I can't express enough that it is in the second sphere that the virtues are the only ones with a moral compass pointing up, whose opposite is named vice, pointing down. Take note that all others said compass is based upon whom they serve, whether that's the Most High, themselves, or man. This is also why anything less than the Most High is considered fallen. This is also why the Most High gives man their seating in the hierarchy of things, right? That's why he had to be given dominion. So, quickly and shortly, I wanted to visit upon you certain things, certain words. And let's take a deeper look. So, what's a meteor? In a general sense, it's a body that flies or floats in the air. And in this sense, it includes rain, hail, snow, etc. But in a restricted sense, in which is commonly understood. Now, it also means that it's a fiery, luminous body or appearance flying or floating in the atmosphere or in a more elevated region. We give this name to the brilliant globs or globes of mass, of matter, which are occasionally seen moving rapidly through the air, through the atmosphere, which throw off with a loud explosion, right? Fragments that reach the earth are called falling stones. We call by the same name those fireballs. Shout out to Fireball, Miss D, and the Copper Colored Awakening, right? Which are usually denominated falling stars, which supposed to be owning to gelatinous matter inflated by the phosphorated hydrogen gas. Also, the light which appears over moist ground in graveyards called ignis fatui, which are ascribed to the same cause, a meteor-like flame lawless through the sky. But when we look at the etymology of the word, notice the similarities, notice what's different, notice what we've already covered. Any atmospheric phenomenon is considered a meteor. The celestial phenomena, things in heaven above, literally things high up. High up, raised from the ground, hanging. In other words, when it says hanging, meaning like floating in the sky. Right? Where we get the combination of words meta means by means of, and aros meaning lifted up, suspended, hovering in the air, which comes from the root word star, WER, in the first meaning to raise, lift, hold suspended. The specific sense of fireball in the sky or shooting star is attested from 1590s, which is funny because I don't think we really use this term anymore, shooting star. Or at least I haven't heard it being used in quite some time in my lifetime. It's as if this term shooting star has been kind of fallen to the wayside. But pay attention that it's the atmospheric phenomena, or formerly classified as area meteors, which is the wind, aqueous meteors, meaning rain, snow, hail. Then you have the luminous meteors, meaning aurora, rainbows. So when you read that there was a rainbow placed in the sky after the flood, we're talking about a meteor. And then you have the igneous meteors, which is lightning, shooting stars. All other senses have since fallen away. A dragon, a kind of winged serpent, much celebrated in the romances in the Middle Ages. And I keep asking you over and over again, what's a romance? We're talking about a fiery shooting meteor or imaginary serpent. So again, all meteors are dragons, but not all dragons are meteors. But a dragon is also what? A fierce, violent person, male or female, as this man or woman is a dragon. Again, remember Genesis chapter 1. He made them both male and female. Right? But it's also a constellation in the northern hemisphere. And then it clearly states that in scripture, dragon seems sometimes to signify a large marine fish or serpent. Isaiah 27:1. The Leviathan is also mentioned. Psalms 74:13. Sometimes it signifies a venomous land serpent. Psalms 91:13. The dragon shalt thou trample underfoot. It is often used for the devil, who is called the old serpent in Revelations 20:2. The dragon is also what? A genus of animals. And when you do this long enough, you really get tired of the animal references. But with understanding the animal references, you also understand the modern day, shall I say, right? Right. I need you guys to pay attention that it says that the wings, right, radiate like fins or a flying fish. I want us to take note and have that foundation and take a look at the word priest. A priest. Clerical ranking. A cleric ranking below a bishop but above a deacon. A parish priest. Probably was shortened from the Old Germanic, meaning a priestar or prester, right? A prester means priest. This is where you get a presbyter. And now you can see the word biter there, or an elder. the old, venerable one. Why is that important? Now, a priest is a chief. It is a man who officiates in sacred offices. Right? Sacred. Among pagans, priests were persons whose appropriate business was to offer sacrifices and perform other sacred rites of religion. In primitive ages, the father of families, princes, and kings were priests. Thus, Cain and Abel, Noah, Abraham, Melchizedek, Job, Isaac, and Jacob offered their own sacrifices, meaning that they were all what? Priests. In the days of Moses, though, the office of priest was restricted to the tribe of Levi. And priesthood consists of 3 orders. The high priest, the high priest, and the Levites. Again, 3 orders, much like the angelic orders, the 3 spheres. Right? You see the similarities and parallels here? See, it was only the office for the Levites was made hereditary for the family of Aaron when it comes to the Levites. Every priest taken from among men is ordained for men in things pertaining to God, that he may offer both gifts and sacrifices for sin. Hebrews 5:1. And in the modern church, a person who is set apart or consecrated to ministry of the gospel of the gospel, a man in orders or license to preach the gospel, a presbyter. A presbyter. Or a prestar or prester. Now pay attention to this. In the most general sense, the word includes archbishops, bishops, patriarchs, and all subordinate orders of the clergy, duly approved and licensed according to the forms and rules of each respective denomination of Christians. As all these orders, quote unquote, are ordained for men in things pertaining to God. But in Great Britain, the word is understood to denote the subordinate orders of the clergy, above a deacon and below a bishop. In the United States, the word denotes any licensed minister of the good spell, the gospel. Let me ask one more time. What's an angel? What's a demon? What's a dragon? What is man? Who's a dragon? Who's a meteor? And who is a press star? First and foremost, I want to say thank you for surfing the wave with me on this one. Thank you for your patience. I hope this wasn't too much to consume. But I wanted to go over this before we again surf the wave back into the trough and talk about the other side of this coin, as it were. Many of you have gifts. Many of you have been quote unquote ordained. Many of you have an order to fill and fulfill. And in our current world that we live in, remember whose you are and who you are. Much hope to the family. Much hope to the tribe. I love you. Peace.